Hello, this is Chuck Ridgway, Automation Technology Manager at Horner. Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday live stream. Now we're wrapping up 2025 today. It's the 30th of December, but we've got another great topic for you. Here it is. Digitizing third-party machines using OCS360. Now in 2025, we probably did more videos on OCS360 than any other product at Horner. We had a lot of big product releases, probably the biggest being the modular controllers with the CPU 300 and the micro CPU 250. However, because we released OCS360, our new cloud service, to the world in 2025, we thought it was really important to have a lot of video content to help guide you through that process of signing up for OCS360, digitizing your machine, basically taking advantage of alarming and dashboarding and all the other capabilities of OCS360. But during the course of 2025, in almost every video, we really focused on the fact that the Horner controller was also controlling the entire machine. And of course, it has the capability of doing that, and that's what it's doing most of the time. However, what we didn't talk about, and we will today, is the fact that with OCS360, yes, you have to have a Horner controller pushing data to the cloud, but that Horner controller doesn't necessarily have to be controlling the entire machine. You can take an existing machine, maybe created years ago with a different controller, and add a Horner controller to that machine for the purposes of grabbing the key machine data, maybe doing some processing and pushing it to the cloud. So what's involved with all that? Which Horner controller should you choose for that purpose? How do you get the data? What's the workflow look like? All those sorts of things. That's what we're going to cover today. And without further ado, let's get started. Okay, we're going to get started with just a real quick review of OCS360 to get everybody up to speed, and then we're going to answer some questions. Why should we add OCS360 to an existing machine? What could the goals be there? And we're going to give you some example applications. And the rest of the time, we're going to answer those questions that I talked about in the open. You know, which controller should I choose? How do I grab my data? All those sorts of things. So here we go. Okay, so here's our quick one-slide review of OCS360. It's Horner's new cloud service that was released in 2025 that basically has the core functions of data recording, so you can take advantage of AI capabilities that are emerging in the industrial marketplace over the upcoming years. Because with AI, you have to have literally years worth of data, machine data, to really take advantage of it. And of course, it offers dashboarding, alarm annunciation, all those sorts of things. Now, OCS360 is supported by all XL Prime and all Canvas controllers, or whether we're talking all-in-ones or modulars. And yes, it does require a subscription to an annual data plan, but those subscriptions are very economical. Now, in terms of why you would add OCS360 to an existing machine, they're the same reasons you would add it to a brand new machine. Again, like I talked about, long-term data recording for AI modeling in the future, dashboarding so you can see machine status, alarming and notifications which can be delivered right to your cell phone if that's what you're after. Again, OCS360 is easy to use and cost-effective. And if you're looking to add some programs, in your company for preventative maintenance, or you have a program that you're looking to start for increasing machine efficiency or process optimization, or maybe you're looking to utilize equipment better at your company, these are all programs where OCS360 can be an integral part of reaching those goals. So now let's go through the how. How can you add OCS360 to an existing machine? Well, we're going to have to start by adding a Horner controller as an edge device to your machine. Now, for those of you who've been watching Industry 4.0 presentations, you've heard the term edge device thrown about for years, okay? But let me go ahead and define it for you here. So my definition of an edge device is this: a physical piece of hardware located on a network near a data source that allows selective data from that source to be sent to an external cloud service. And in this case, the data source is your existing machine, and the external cloud service is OCS360. So yes, we have to start by selecting a Horner controller to add to the machine as an edge device. But which Horner controller should we choose? There really aren't any wrong answers. Any product in the XL Prime series, any product in the Canvas collection, all have OCS360 capabilities built into them. So again, you can choose really any of these products to get the job done. However, I am going to focus a bit on a couple particular products that I think work really well as an OCS360 edge device, starting with the X5 Prime. Now, the X5 Prime is perfect for small machines because it is small itself. So if you're looking to fit a small edge device into an existing machine, maybe an existing control panel, or you're looking to add maybe a really small control panel to the system for the purposes of digitizing the machine, the X5 Prime is tiny, but it carries a punch. It supports all the most common industrial protocols, so whether it's Ethernet IP or Modbus TCP, those are all built in. And it has a nice small complement of I/O built right into it that you could use to tap into some existing machine signals. So it's got that nice package of being able to fit just about anywhere to add that, OCS360 capability to that existing machine. But next we're going to talk about what I consider kind of the ultimate edge device when it comes to Horner products, and that is the Canvas CPU 300. So this product, again, is quite compact. It can be, installed in an enclosure. Maybe it's an existing enclosure if there's room in that enclosure, or maybe a small additional enclosure, and it's got all the connectivity you could need for an edge device. It's got Ethernet support, of course, for those protocols I talked about, Ethernet IP and more. It has a built-in switch. It's got, a serial port for protocols if you're going to grab data that way. And if you're going to tap into some existing signals, some electrical signals or some new sensors or something to grab the data from that existing machine, it'll support just about any signal type you could possibly want through the addition of OCS-IO. So it's really got everything built right into it. And then one thing I want to talk about, and this applies not only, of course, to the CPU 300, but also to the X5 Prime on the previous slide, and that is they both can use Cscape to process and filter your data, your machine data, prior to pushing it to the cloud. So maybe with an existing cloud device or a third-party cloud device that's just designed for pushing data, it has some sort of, language or approach for processing data before pushing it to the cloud. With the Horner products, you can just use the logic you already know to scale your data and to filter your data and determine which of the machine variables you actually want to push. All that sort of pre-processing you can do right on board, again, using a logic you already know with Cscape. And if you want to add a touchscreen to the system, maybe for the purposes of diagnostics, that's a nice capability that X5 Prime has. If you want to add that capability to the Canvas CPU 300, you can do that as well, with the added benefit of being able to locate that screen pretty much wherever you want within about 10 meters or so of the unit. Now let's talk about, once we've selected a Horner device, where are we going to actually put it? Well, we've got two options. If there's space, of course, we can put it inside an existing panel for the machine, okay? Both the options I talked about don't take up a ton of space. So, if you've got, some open real estate there, you can probably fit it right inside your existing panel. But if that does not look possible, and believe me, I've seen plenty of control panels that are just chock full, when the machine is delivered, you can add a small control panel near the machine that taps into, communication signals, etc., and gets the job done. So again, it doesn't have to be inside the existing panel. You can put it in a small panel and just add that to the system. Now, how are you going to get data out of this existing machine? Well, today we're going to talk about two primary methods. And again, this applies both whether you're talking about using an X5 Prime or using the modular CPU 300 or any other Horner product for that matter that's part of the Canvas, the Prime series. We're going to talk about grabbing data using communications, and we're going to talk about grabbing data using I/O. Those are the two primary methods we're going to talk about. let's get started talking about the communications options and starting with a scenario where your existing machine is a Rockwell-based or features a Rockwell-based PLC or controller, okay? So in this scenario, there's probably a couple different ways to grab the data digitally or grab the data through communications. The first we're going to talk about is something called Logix Tag Exchange. Now, this will only work for you if you have control or access to the program that's running on the PLC. If you do, then you can export what's called an L5K file and import that into Cscape and use that to map the tags or select tags within the Rockwell PLC into the Horner controller or the Horner Edge device in this case. And then ultimately you can take some of that data maybe after processing or maybe directly and send it up to the cloud. So this is the first approach you can use with a Rockwell-based machine that is using Logix Tag Exchange. Now, if you're interested in exactly how to do Logix Tag Exchange with examples and demos and all that kind of good stuff, I've got a video that I recorded a while back. I've got the thumbnail here, and you can go back and reference that video, and it'll give you everything you need to know about Logix Tag Exchange. Okay, the second communications method we're going to talk about, if you have a Rockwell-based system, and in this case, it doesn't have to be Rockwell-based. It just has to be a machine where the PLC is using Ethernet IP as its method of moving data around the machine. So if that's the scenario, you can use basically something called Ethernet IP implicit data, sometimes called, I/O adapter protocol. Occasionally it'll be called that, to grab data digitally out of the PLC. Okay, so that's another option you have. Again, you have to have control over the program that's running in the Rockwell PLC. And in this case, what you're going to do is you're going to go in and make some simple programming changes, not to change any logic or anything like that. All you're going to do is add the Horner controller as an Ethernet IP I/O device, and then send some data off to it on a regular basis. And basically the Horner's going to use that as the basis for the machine data that's going to be pushed to the cloud. So Ethernet IP, I/O data, or implicit data is your next option with communications, gathering data from a Rockwell PLC. Now, again, like previously, we have plenty of videos on how to do this, and I've got the thumbnail for one of them here on the screen. So we've looked at two different options so far, but both of them have been fairly Rockwell-centric. The next one we're going to talk about is much more general purpose, and that is Modbus TCP. So many PLCs support Modbus TCP server protocol because they need to be able to be pulled by things like SCADA devices and those sorts of things. And by far the most common protocol used for that purpose is Modbus TCP. So the Horner, when used as an edge controller, of course, it has support for Modbus TCP client, and we can pull a PLC that's running Modbus TCP server. And if your machine vendor or your machine developer, when they created the machine, if they published a data map, that says here's where the data can be found, the key data for the machine, then you can probably easily access that from the Horner and then do some local processing using Cscape, and then again, push it up to the cloud. So it doesn't have to be a Schneider PLC. Really, any controller or any machine that supports Modbus TCP with a published data map, you can grab the data that way. And again, we have plenty of videos on how to do this, with one recommended there on the screen. All right, now this is maybe a little more of a rare case, but way back in the day, back in the 90s really, Horner had some tremendous connection with a company back then called GE Fanuc. That was a very popular mid-size PLC manufacturer. Subsequently, they were purchased by Emerson, and I believe it's Emerson now which kind of carries the GE PLC flag. However, there were a lot of machines developed using these particular controllers, and if you happen to have one in your stable of machines and you'd like to, digitize that machine, the Horner controller is uniquely qualified to be able to act as an edge device for this particular PLC, because we support all the native protocols of the GE PLC ecosystem, including Series 90 protocol, usually called SNP, and Ethernet Global Data, which is more than just a GE protocol, but it was a native protocol in the GE world. So again, if you have an old GE machine and you're looking to digitize it, the Horner is an outstanding choice. And in this case, we don't necessarily have any videos that I've done in the past for using SNP and that sort of thing. However, our help file has all kinds of details on both SNP Protocol, which is an RS-485 protocol, and Ethernet Global Data. And we do have some videos on Ethernet Global Data, but none that are specifically pointed at grabbing data out of a GE device. Okay. We've exhausted, at least for now, the most common ways of grabbing data via communications from your existing machine. Now, next we're going to talk about another approach, and that is just using hardwired signals, tapping into some of those hardwired signals, or maybe adding some sensors and those sorts of things to connect to your machine via I/O. All right, so some examples of some signals that you might want to tap into, maybe the run signal. So if you've got a machine efficiency program and you want to know when your machine's running and not running, that's a simple thing you can tap into. Your machine cycle signal. So if you're looking to keep track of the production and efficiency of the machine, that's another signal you can tap into. You can basically monitor the machine to see what mode it's in at any given time. Usually that's available as an electrical signal. Is it an automatic or manual? Is the e-stop signal tripped? That sort of thing. So, and there are plenty of other signals that are right there on the machine that you can basically tap into. And again, the Horner ecosystem has standard DC inputs available on every product in both the Prime and the Canvas series. So it can be really easy to do. Now, when we're talking about the modular CPU 300, when used as the edge device, now we're talking about using OCS I/O if we're going to tap into I/O signals. Of course, just like all Horner controllers, we support straight 24-volt DC inputs, but the beauty of the OCS I/O when it's connected to a CPU 300 is you can support more than just 12 and 24-volt systems. You can support 120 volts, for instance, if you need to tap into an AC signal, because, you know, we've got an AC input module available for OCS I/O. And there's even a way of grabbing 5-volt data as well. So again, that's one of the reasons I think the CPU 300 is the ultimate edge device, and that's because it has the ultimate capability of connecting to whatever type of I/O you might possibly need on an existing machine. Now, if you're talking about one of our other controllers, maybe like the X5 Prime, and you want to tap into an AC signal, you can still do that. You're just going to need some extra equipment to do that with. And an example of that would be an opto isolator that you would place between an AC signal you're tapping into and your standard DC inputs on the back of the X5 Prime. That's a simple device that's available that you can use for that particular purpose. So if you have AC signals to tap into, that doesn't mean you're locked into OCS I/O to monitor that signal. Okay, so tapping into signals is one thing. Maybe in some scenarios, you're going to need to add additional sensors to an existing machine to monitor independently what's going on with that machine, again, for the purposes of digitizing it to the cloud. And this could be a great approach for an application where maybe there's a process going on or something, and it's a really older machine, you don't have any way of tapping into it data-wise, and you're not even sure what sensors to use to tap into, so you just add additional sensors, maybe additional temperature sensors for temperature monitoring, or pressure sensors, maybe level sensors. Lots of sensors that are available that you can easily add to a process or a machine that can be used to independently monitor what's happening with that machine. So that's another option you have. And again, the Horner products are great at I/O, none better, again, than the CPU 300, right? And if it's an analog intensive application, if there's quite a few temperatures you want to monitor, or multiple levels, or whatever the case may be, if there's a bunch of them, maybe beyond 4 analog inputs, or even if there's a mix of different types of analog, you can't really beat the CPU 300 and OCS I/O for monitoring those signals as well. High resolution, flexible sensor support, high density, all those capabilities available with OCS I/O and the CPU 300. If you're interfacing with specialty sensors with our products that don't have direct support, for example, for thermocouples and RTDs, again, in this scenario, you would add another piece of hardware in the mix, this time a temperature transmitter to convert that temperature sensor signal into a straight 4 to 20 milliamp analog signal. So if you've got a temperature or two you're monitoring with an X5 Prime, for instance, you just have a little bit of extra hardware to add to the system. Okay. So let's summarize. What's our overall workflow look like when we're adding a Horner product as an edge device to digitize the machine using OCS360? Well, first of all, we're going to determine the key machine data that we want to send to the cloud. What are we trying to capture on this existing machine? Then we're going to figure out how we can best acquire it. Can we get it via communications? Is that even possible with this machine? If so, what protocol are we going to use to make that happen? If that's not possible, maybe we can tap into existing I/O signals that are already available, or maybe we need to add parallel sensors or new sensors to the system that we can independently monitor from the Horner controller for the purposes of sending to the cloud. Then we need, based on that information, to select a Horner controller. I've made a couple of recommendations to you. You have the entire Prime and Canvas product series to look at to find the one that fits your needs the best. Once you've done that, you need to install and program the Horner. And again, you can take advantage of the language you already know for scaling and filtering and those sorts of things. Just because you're grabbing a lot of data from the machine, or maybe really frequently, doesn't mean you have to push all that data to the cloud. You can push just selectively the meaningful data by using Cscape to kind of filter that information or scale that information, that sort of thing. And then once you've got that data all prepared for the cloud, then you need to implement the OCS360 cloud service. And when it comes to implementation of OCS360, as I mentioned in the open, this year we have extensively covered OCS360 with plenty of how-to videos on our YouTube channel that'll guide you through that process. So plenty of material already available on our YouTube channel. That does it for our content for today. If you're looking to add a Horner training class to your schedule for 2026, hop to it, get to our website, and sign up today. Lots of ways to interact with Horner online on our website at hornerautomation.com. Hundreds of videos on our YouTube channel. I highlighted several earlier, but there's hundreds more to choose from. And don't forget to keep up with Horner, the latest news on LinkedIn. So for our first video of 2026, we're going to give you a factory tour. So that should be a lot of fun. We brag about the fact that we manufacture here in the United States of America, and we want to give you some additional details so you can see just how we do that. And we're also going to give you a bit of a preview of 2026. We're not going to spill the entire set of beans, but we'll give you a nice preview of what's happening or what's to come in 2026. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, don't hesitate to do so. It doesn't cost anything. And if you choose notifications when you subscribe, you'll be notified every time we go live or every time we post a new video. Okay, so we'll be ringing in the new year this year. I hope you've all had the opportunity to spend time with family over the holidays. I know I have, and it's been a real highlight. My family here in Indiana, I've had a chance to, spend time with both my daughters and my wife and my family in Michigan and my family here, and it's just been awesome. So let's all ring in the new year of 2026, and while we're doing that, let's do some good.